File item 148, Senator McGuire. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 1174 by Senator McGuire, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
Senator McGuire.
Madam President, good afternoon, colleagues. SB 1174 seeks to respond to a growing and significant concern over the excessive prescription of psychotropic medication to foster youth here in the great state of California. Even with our current safeguards in place via the JV 220 process and the growing media attention to this pressing matter, the problem is now more severe than what we've ever seen in our state's history of the 63 foster youth who are in our foster care system. According to UC Berkeley, over the past 15 years, the rate of foster youth being prescribed psychotropic medication has increased an astounding 1,400%. California spends more on psychotropic drugs for foster kids than any other medication, which represents a staggering 72% of all medication spending. Additionally, there are substantial long-term negative impacts to our most vulnerable youth who are overprescribed these mind-numbing medications, such as severe depression, obesity, and diabetes. According to data from the Department of Healthcare Services, nearly 1 in 4 California foster teens are prescribed psychotropic drugs. Of those 1 in 4, nearly 60% were prescribed an antipsychotic. This is the most powerful drug class that is susceptible to damaging side effects. 36% are prescribed multiple medications. To make matters worse, colleagues, many of these antipsychotics are off-label, estimated to be about 75% of all prescriptions, meaning that they have not had the approval to be able to prescribe for that age group. Equally important to note is that California has no requirements to identify those who are overprescribing medication to foster youth. California currently does not have a system for evaluating the medical soundness of high rates of prescribing and no way to measure the efficacy of these practices. Here's some staggering statistics, Madam President. In 2014-2015, the California Medical Board received 8,267 complaints for overprescription of youth, of which 1,381 cases were open for investigation by the board. From there, only 471 cases were referred to the Office of the Attorney General for filing a formal accusation, and only 47 professionals were disciplined. There were no complaints that were registered with the medical board stemming from the foster care system. That means not one complaint came from a foster youth, only private pay HMO kids. SB 1174 establishes a formal, ongoing process for the California Medical Board to review and confidentially investigate psych med prescription patterns outside the standard of care. And by the way, colleagues, we have a 1-year agreement now. This would simply extend the agreement between the Department of Healthcare Services and the Medical Board. This legislation will focus on a small number of outlier prescribers who are engaging in potential violations of law or excessive prescribing defined by the parameters set forth in the nationally accepted healthcare effectiveness data and information set. All information is completely confidential until the point, and if there is a point, of a formal charge by the Attorney General. Without this data, the Medical Board cannot perform their basic oversight duty. SB 1174 will enable California to implement what is already standard oversight in the state of Washington, in the state of Illinois, and Ohio. These state initiatives have shown a 25% decrease in dangerous prescribing practices. The state of Washington, for example, has also saved an annual $1.2 million from their equivalent to what Medi-Cal is in the state of Washington. Members, it's time that we provide our foster youth with the medical protections that they deserved. I held the bill last year, Madam President, because it was not ready. We have been working with all sides to be able to advance this bill this year, and it's time that we provide our foster youth with the same medical protections as youth who can afford insurance. Would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Senator Allen?
Question for the author.
Mr. Author, are you willing to take a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Please proceed, Senator Allen.
All right, thank you, Senator. I agree with the core principles behind your bill. I couldn't help but notice on the back of the analysis that the CMA, the Medical Association, is requesting an amendment to ensure that educational outreach be required before the NBC could initiate an investigation based on the data received from DHCS. They suggested the guidelines could be a useful tool as a centerpiece of educational outreach. That seemed to me to be a reasonable suggestion, and I'd love to hear about the status of that amendment, your willingness to work with CMA on this issue, et cetera.
Thank you so much. Through the president, answering the question, the great senator from Santa Monica, we have been meeting with representatives from CMA, as well as representatives from child psychiatrists over the past year. And I'd say a half dozen, maybe 8 occasions, we have asked both associations for amendments in writing. Not once have we received one formal amendment in writing. And we'd love to be able to work with both of them, but to be able to offer up the amendments, we need to be able to see that in writing, and we'd love to be able to work with them on that educational component.
Okay, so my tendency is to support the bill today, but I would hope that you'd be able to work with them. I don't know why they haven't sent you amendments, but I would hope that they would do so, and you'd be able to work with them on this issue, because I do think that in the end of the day, this should be about addressing the issue rather than punishing people. And so I'm prepared to support you today with that understanding.
No, I appreciate that. And Madam President, I think what's really important, those who are being punished right now are the foster youth. We have, again, over 8,200 complaints into the medical board last year for overprescribing. Not one of the 8,200 complaints are from a foster youth. We have a huge problem in our state's foster care system.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Senator Pan?
Thank you, Madam President, members. I unfortunately have to stand, at least this time, in opposition to this bill, and I do want to thank my good friend and colleague Senator from Healdsburg for his efforts in trying to address a very important problem, which is about overprescription of psychotropic medications for foster youth. However, I think we also need to look at the flip side of the coin as well. And I will tell you that as a pediatrician, those are actually the kids I mainly took care of. I took care of kids on Medi-Cal, many of them were foster youth, and I particularly, as a general pediatrician, focused on children who had behavioral issues. And one of the challenges that I faced as a pediatrician practicing in this area was that actually very few other physicians were interested in taking care of this population. Because after all, first of all, Medi-Cal isn't the greatest payer in the world. Taking care of children who have these conditions takes a lot of time. It's not like I can just send them for a test to diagnose them. It takes a lot of work with the parents or the foster parents, with the child, spending time interviewing, evaluating them. And it takes basically there are a lot of people who were not interested in seeing these patients, so they'd send them over to me. And my concern is that, of course, accepting and caring for a lot of these patients, that, of course, I would end up, of course, treating a lot of them, including putting children on medications, also taking children off medications as well. But certainly would, of course, if anyone looked at it, if you looked at the typical pediatrician, would say that, well, gee, he seems to prescribe a lot of the medications because after all, because I was the one willing to see them. And I think we have to be careful that we don't get into a situation where we're discouraging the few people who are actually willing to take care of this population from deciding that we have even more reasons not to. And so I'm hoping that we can strike the right balance. I think, appreciate that my good friend from Santa Monica brought up the point about saying that as we're asking the medical board to really look at data across population, right? That's what you're doing. Medi-Cal is providing data that's looking across the population, that just because someone's prescribing a higher rate of medication may be due to, again, the nature of their practice, and actually someone who you actually want to continue to be able to actually providing access to these kids. And so I do think that it's important that before the medical board steps in and taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, we want to take a look at all your prescriptions because we just noticed you have a higher rate, that there's an intermediary step where someone is reviewing the cases. I think there's a suggestion from the child psychiatrist that there's a panel to review, because after all, the data that the medical board's getting isn't case-by-case data. That someone also, that there's an educational component, and clearly, I think as the author of the bill pointed out, we do need to have more advocates for foster youth. We need to have advocates who can not only stand up for them, but report them. We've taken action here on the floor to actually try to increase the number of public health nurses who are working with our foster youth to do more reviews. Those are all very important steps because there is certainly a problem that we need to try to address. But I also hope that the solution doesn't actually exacerbate another problem, which is actually access to care, particularly care for mental health conditions, because we're discouraging the very physicians who are willing to take care of them from actually increasing their burden so that they are less likely to do so. So I appreciate what my good friend is trying to do. I hope that he can continue to work with people who are in the field, on the front lines, be sure that we hit that right balance. And, but unfortunately, at this point in time, I'm not able to support the bill as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pan. Senator Mitchell and then Senator Hancock. Senator Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Madam President. A question of the author?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator McGuire, yes? Please proceed.
I know you said it twice, but I just really need to clarify to make sure that I am clear. And first of all, I'm co-author in the bill, so I want to make sure that my understanding was correct when I agreed to co-author. And so I've heard you say today that under current law, the medical board currently collects data, conducts investigations, et cetera, for the rate of prescriptions to private pay minors. That is correct, sir?
You are correct.
And this may be historic data that may be unfair to ask you as a relatively new member of this House, but do you have any idea as to why perhaps Medi-Cal beneficiaries were carved out of that data collection in the first place?
They have never been, with the exception of this year where we have a one-year data sharing agreement. That agreement does expire at the end of this calendar year. It's the first time in decades.
Thank you. And so if I may, Madam President,
Please.
just say that I think that it's dangerous for us to mix apples and oranges in the debate on this bill. Many of us on this floor have talked about the importance of appropriately reimbursing Medi-Cal providers who have historically provided critical care and services to low-income Californians. The OBGYNs who accept Medi-Cal have always talked about fear around their positive delivery rates when they agree to serve patients who are compromised from a variety of perspectives, lack of access to early care. However, to suggest that Medi-Cal providers would therefore willingly not see children in foster care or be guarded in some way if prescribing psychotropic meds is indeed appropriate, I think is a leap, quite frankly. And in the context of this bill, to suggest that because of their inadequate reimbursement rate and because of their willingness to serve children in foster care, that they should be held to some different standard compared to doctors who are treating private paid children with the same drugs. We have had numerous bills before this House the last 2 years brought forward based on pretty expansive press coverage that talks about the disproportionate rate children in foster care experience in receiving those prescribed medications. We have heard hours of testimony in policy committee and budget subcommittee from foster youth themselves who tell pretty egregious stories about the number of medication, the doses of medication that they've been given. And tragically for them, because of the system, the lack of continuity of their care from one prescriber, and to move from county to county or foster placement to foster placement and not have the experience of continuity of care further complicates their treatment. And so I think it's important, if for no other reason, based on sheer equity, if the medical board currently is reviewing and conducting investigations in the case of private pay youth, why not the foster care youth who are our collective responsibility to protect and serve? And so with that, I would ask for support of Mr. McGuire's SB 1174.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Senator Hancock?
Thank you, Madam President. I also rise in support of this bill. I had not really focused on the point just made by Senator Mitchell, but it's a very compelling point. If we do this for private pay kids, we should do it for foster kids. I was going to speak to the bill really just from personal experience. I had the honor twice in my years in the legislature for having an intern who had been a foster youth work for a year in my office. Both of the remarkable young women, Lily Colby and Sade Daniels, you may know some of them, they have gone on to put their life into change in some of these systems that we have built that don't work for young people. But I heard from them of their, not only the stories of over-medication of some of the young people they knew, but of their own fear that if you're in a group home or something, you will be given drugs that will make your mind foggy and less able to try to cope with your world and plan your way out. So since we have identified it as a problem, I think it's really important that this bill move forward. I like the idea of an amendment. I hope the CMA comes forward with one for an educational program before it's implemented, and also to make clear that if there are some doctors who work very exclusively with a population that may need these medications, that that's acknowledged and there's an opportunity to describe that. So over the years, I've also found that if you can visualize and describe in words what you want to do, you can find a way to put it in the legislation that will really ensure that it works. So I think this is an excellent bill, and I would ask for all of our aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Hancock. Senator McGuire, would you like to close?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I do want to say thank you to each of the senators for their words. Madam President, it was 11 years ago this year that this distinguished body, the State Senate, held a hearing on overprescription of antipsychotics and psychotropics. And since then, we have seen a significant increase in the usage of both these drugs in our foster care system. And in fact, over the last 15 years, members, 1,400% increase. Foster kids are medicated 4 to 12 times higher than children in the general population. And what we know, one of the biggest obstacles with Medi-Cal right now are low reimbursement rates. I would hope that we are going to send a signal to those 63,000 foster youth that they deserve the same oversight as youth who can afford private pay insurance. This bill applies only to a small percentage of prescribers and those who are outliers. I'd like to be able to bring forward a letter that was signed by then chair of B&P, now Congressman Ted Lieu, asking for the same oversight 2 years ago, which was never implemented. We'll close with this. We cannot afford to wait yet another year. We have stalled this for 15 years, and the only ones who are punished by that are the foster youth here in our state system. Would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? Aye. Bates? I, Bell. I, Berryhill. Block. I, Canella. I, DeLeon. Fuller. Gaines. I, Galgiani. I, Glazer. I, Hall. I, Hancock. I, Hernandez. I, Hertzberg. I, Hill. I, Hueso. Huff. Jackson. I, Lara. I, Leno. I, Leyva. I, Liu. I, McGuire. I, Mendoza. I, Mitchell. I, Monning. I, Morlock. I, Morel. Wynn. I, Nielsen. I, Pan. No, Pavley. I, Roth. I, Runner. Stone. No, Vidak. I, Wykowski. I, Wolk. I,
Please call the absent members.
Berryhill. I, DeLeon. Fuller. Hueso. Fuller, I. Hueso. I, Huff. I, Morel. No. Runner.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ayes 35, noes 3. Measure passes. Members, we are going to return to motions, resolutions, and announcements. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Madam President, the Committee on Rules announces the appointment of Senators Leno, Lara, Nielsen, Hancock, and Bates as a Senate Committee on Conference concerning SB 826 to meet a like committee of the Assembly.
Without objection, pursuant to Joint Rule 33.1, Joint Rules 28, 28.1, and 29, as it relates to the Conference Committee, will be suspended for SB 826. There are floor amendments at the desk, and they will be deemed adopted. Back to the file, members. File item 149, Senator Galgiani. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 1176 by Senator Galgiani, an act relating to public contracts.
Senator Galgiani.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. SB 1176 updates the average annual gross receipts limit California small and micro businesses must meet as a condition to participate in certain state procurement programs. The measure increases the 3-year average annual gross receipts limit requirement from its statutory limit of $10 million for small businesses to $15 million and $2.5 million for micro businesses to $5 million. For public works projects, the limit is raised to $25 million and up to 200 employees. SB 1176 also requires the Director of General Services to biannually adjust the income limits based on the California Consumer Price Index. The limits have not been adjusted for 7 years since late 2009. The proposed adjustment takes into consideration inflation, the benefits of increased competition as more small businesses become eligible for state contracting preferences. The measure has no known opposition and is supported by the Coalition of Small and Disabled Veteran Businesses, the California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Los Angeles County Business Federation, and the Greater Los Angeles African American Chamber of Commerce. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Galgiani. Seeing no debate or discussion, members, is there any objection to using a unanimous roll call? Seeing none, ayes 37, noes 0. Thank you, members. Measure passes. File item 150, Senator Galgiani. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 1182 by Senator Galgiani, an act related to controlled substances.
Senator Galgiani.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I rise to present SB 333 relating to 3 substances commonly known as date rape drugs. In November 2014, Proposition 47 was approved by voters, which reclassified many crimes that were previously eligible to be charged as either a felony or a misdemeanor to solely misdemeanor charges. This included reducing the penalties for the illegal possession of the drugs Rohypnol, ketamine, and GHB, commonly known as date rape drugs. The law enforcement community and sexual assault survivor advocate organizations have expressed concern over this change and how it could potentially weaken current sexual assault laws. These date rape drugs will render a sexual assault victim completely incapacitated. They also result in a victim having little to no memory of the assault which took place. This can result in a situation where a rapist can escape prosecution because a victim can't remember the details of the crime when questioned in court. SB 1182 would create a felony crime for the possession of date rape drugs with the intent to commit sexual assault. This bill will allow prosecutors to bring felony charges against a perpetrator who has been found in possession of these drugs and has taken steps to use them to facilitate a sexual assault. Given the difficult nature of prosecuting sexual assault crimes, the legislature should embrace this opportunity to provide serious consequences for criminals looking to use date rape drugs to facilitate a heinous crime. SB 1182 recognizes that date rape drugs can be used as a tool for sexual predators, and when they are used for this purpose, there must be an appropriate response by law enforcement. Thank you, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Galgiani. Seeing no discussion or debate, members, is there any objection to using a unanimous roll call? Hearing and seeing none, ayes 35, no 0, measure passes. File item 151, Senator McGuire. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 1188 by Senator McGuire, an act relating to fish and wildlife.
Senator McGuire.
Well, good to see you again, Madam President. Would like to be able to think back to the year of 1949. California established a process to offset adverse impacts to county property tax revenues that result when state acquires private property for state-controlled wildlife management areas. This is one of the president's favorite issues. It's called payment in lieu of taxes, also known as PILT. And PILT helps small and rural counties fund vital services such as law enforcement, local fire and paramedic agencies, healthcare programs. And they support law enforcement and prosecution. And without these funds, it's even more difficult to be able to provide core services, such as funding for these vital services, without being able to advance the PILT funds. These payments underwrite the loss of property taxes, an important source of revenue to counties used to fund local programs. However, after 67 years, last year's budget included language in Fish and Game Code that changed that decades-long commitment to millions of Californians by changing shall to may, whereby making future PILT payments to California's 36 PILT counties optional. I cannot stress enough how important these dollars are for our rural counties. For example, through this fiscal year, Humboldt County alone is owed more than $500,000 because of those fish and wildlife lands. While that may not seem a lot to the state as a whole, these are desperately needed funds that can and will help boost struggling rural communities where unemployment rates still hover near double digits. This measure is complementary to both 15-16 and 16-17 budgets, which allocate $644,000 to the affected counties. While urban areas throughout this great state have mostly recovered from the impacts of the recession, rural areas of California continue to struggle to provide core services. SB 1188 will ensure future payments are made to the affected counties by reverting Fish and Game Code to the original intent of the law by changing may back to shall. And I do want to thank the great senator from Davis and the great senator from Gerber for being co-authors on this important issue, and especially to the great senator of Davis for all of her work, along with the great senator from Gerber over these past many years.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Senator Nielsen.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I entreat our members to unanimously support this legislation. It's one of the sad parts of last year's budget, one of the infuriating bits of that budget for me. The kind of the final straw, if you will, on the bad faith of the state of California to our counties. Dating way back to 1949, and I was not here then, but there was a desire to get some more parklands throughout the state. And to compensate our counties to help with that burden of the lands being taken off the tax rolls, then this payment in lieu concept came into place. And over the decades, more and more and more acreages in our counties was taken off the rolls for more and more and more acres of parklands. And over those decades, the state departments, and particularly the Department of Fish and now Wildlife, didn't pay their debts, accruing vast amounts of money to our counties. My colleague from Davis started before I came back to the legislature, and then I joined with her in our quest, so far not successful, to get the state to pay up. And I guess what was born of last year by whoever proposed that addition to the budget, well, let's just quit, and let's just make it optional now. Well, if we make it optional, you might as well make it mandatory. We will not do payments in lieu anymore. If that be the case, and I did make this statement in committee, I'm going to recommend to our counties not to encumber any more of their lands and parks, because the state will not keep its word.
Yeah, no, I'm confused.
This important legislation, and it is not inconsequent, it is significant. But changing a word is of huge importance. But then the legislature, in our budget and in our legislative process, must then hold ourselves accountable to the counties by making those payments in lieu. This is a superb and very significant bill. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Senator McGuire, would you like to close?
Would respectfully ask for an aye vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Seeing no debate or discussion, members, is there any objection to using a unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none, ayes 34, noes 0, measure passes. File item 152, Senator Pan. Pass on file. File item 153, Senator Hill. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 1192 by Senator Hill, an act relating to private post-secondary education, making an appropriation therefore.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, SB 1192 is the sunset bill for the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education. The bill is necessary to make changes to the Private Post-Secondary Education Act in order to ensure continued oversight of private post-secondary institutions that supports quality, innovative programs which are approved in a timely manner, while also making sure a robust government structure prevents predatory practices and promotes student success. I'm continuing to work with the stakeholders to ensure parity in the Bureau's fee structure and to try to streamline some of the job placement figures in schools that are required to provide the Bureau. The bill provides BPPE the authority to give extensions on the timeline for unaccredited degree-granting institutions to become accredited, according to certain evidence. It is not my intention to punish schools by continuing the requirement that they be accredited. Rather, the goal is to ensure a baseline measure of quality for programs that offer degrees. I hope that by giving the Bureau this discretion, as this bill does, they can work with the schools as they progress in the accreditation process. The bill also establishes an Office of Student Assistance and Relief to serve as a primary point of contact to address the needs of private post-secondary education students, and requires the office to establish and maintain a website to provide information to students about their rights and protections available to them, as well as information about free services available to students provided by local nonprofit community service organizations. The bill follows up on conversations the Senate had last year in an oversight hearing following the abrupt closure of Corinthian colleges. SB 1192 provides recourse through the Student Tuition Recovery Fund to students impacted by this closure. One step we can take to help these students and make their lives whole. I respectfully ask for an aye vote, members.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Members, is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none, is there any objection to using a unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none, ayes 34, noes 0. Thank you, members. File item 154, Senator Hertzberg. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 1203 by Senator Hertzberg, an act relating to retirement.
Senator Hertzberg.
Thank you, Madam President. The Pension Reform Act provides for the ability or portability of your classic pension benefits from job to job within the system. There's a hole in the law with respect to joint powers authority. This measure remedies that by allowing the classic application of transfer when there's a joint powers authority involved because the law was passed afterwards and we're trying to fix it, and that's what we do here in the California State Senate. Ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Hertzberg. Members, is there any discussion or debate? Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? Bell? Aye. Berryhill? No. Block? Aye. Cannella? Aye. DeLeon? Fuller? Gaines? Aye. Galgiani? Aye. Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Hueso? Aye. Huff? Aye. Jackson? Aye. Lara? Leno? Leyva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? Wynn? Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Aye. Runner? Stone? Vidak? Wykowski? Aye. Wolk?
Please call the absent members.
Aye. Bates? DeLeon? Fuller? Hancock? Lara? Leno? Mitchell? Morrell? Wynn? Runner? Stone? Vidak? Vidak, aye.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ayes 25, noes 4. The measure passes. File item 155, Senator Hueso. Mr. Secretary, please read.